Welcome to another episode of AniBreak, the show where we talk about everything anime, manga, and video games. And this week, we're going to talk about, let's talk about cars, which is kind of an odd thing to say. We're talking about anime, then we're talking about cars. Specifically, we're going to talk about cars in anime. There are several dozen racing anime out there, but a lot of them consist of very just out there designs, some kind of based on real life, cars, or even at least their chassis. For example, Redline is the first one that comes to mind. I mean, it's kind of an actual car, but no, it's not. It's it's doing something that the actual car cannot even get close to doing in real life. Let me cover just a few cars. Let's start off with Lupin. I mean, when people think Lupin the Third, they think cool, they think action, they think thievery, and more often than not, they always say that little yellow Fiat 500. It was actually based on the 1957 Fiat 500 Cinque Cento. That off-yellow design has been used throughout the series and several movies like, Green vs. Red, and of course the most celebrated scene using that car was from Castle Cagliostro, which Hayao Miyazaki directed. Just for, namesake, just because we're just going to enjoy it, I'm going to play that scene for you right now. When you watch a scene like that, all I can think in the back of my head is, physics, it doesn't make sense! But who cares? It's so much fun. It's one of those scenes where you're like, oh my god, it's so freaking cool. Yeah, like Nightstar says in the chat, always like that clip. Even if you're not even going to watch the entire movie, if you're watching that one scene, you're like, alright, I'm good. This car has been so popular that Fiat themselves actually offered a limited edition of their Fiat Nuova 500 back in 2008 in that off-yellow color that actually came with images of Lupin and the car itself. I guess it was just a simple marketing time to try to sell more of the cars, but you know what? That's kind of cool to actually have a Fiat that's based off the Fiat that they used in the anime. It's just a way it's a marketing play, but you know what? It's still freaking cool. I would have bought one, but one, they're limited edition, so they're a hell of a lot of money, and two, it was back in 2008, therefore all of them are sold. Surprisingly, earlier this year, some other car manufacturer other than Fiat, I think it was Suzuki, actually wanted to create a car for Lupin. And they did this whole little bit, and they had promotional materials with Lupin, but it wasn't a Fiat 500. I'm like, why are you trying to have Lupin sell a Suzuki? Lupin's never driven a Suzuki before. Okay, sure, whatever. Oh, what other cars do we want to talk about next? You'll find in through most of this that many of these cars were used in classic anime. When I mean classic anime, I mean series from the 1980s up in early and mid-1990s. Once you got around the 2000s, there wasn't really that many, surprisingly. There were a few here and there, which we'll get to in a bit. But let's talk some more of the classic ones. Let's talk Eva. Everybody talks about, it's Eva Unit 1 and all the angels. No, there were some pretty epic cars in there. Specifically, there was one that, everyone associates with Eva, and that was actually what the car Misato drove. Let me give you a picture of it right here. This is actually an Alpine Renault A310. The interesting thing about this is that it has to be highly customizable because, if you can see, it's actually right-hand drive, and it's stick. You can't see that in that picture, but it's manual. What's funny is that the A310 was actually only left-hand drive available, plus I believe it was only automatic. The interesting thing about the choice of the car, though, is actually based on the character. One of the rumors is actually Misato was actually inspired by Fujiko from Lupin the Third. And in the first episode of that TV series, she was actually driving an Alpine Renault A110. So I guess it's kind of an homage, maybe. It's too close to be considered just a coincidence, but see what happens. What's funny is that in the movies, they decided to change, which made no sense because the Renault A310 is very nice. Why don't you continue on what you can do? And because it's a movie, you have a higher budget, therefore better detail. No, they decided to change it up a bit and instead move to actually this. And I'm thinking, why do you change from an Alpine Renault A310 to a Mazda Cosmo? I mean, okay, it kind of looks, okay, but you had such a classic, iconic style from the series. Why would you change that? The only thing I can think of is money, but oh well. On a side note, it was surprisingly that I don't remember in the series, but I've read it everywhere that Kaji actually drove a Lotus Elan 1600, and that surprised me. So after the show tonight, I might need to boot up the DVDs and see if I can find that scene, because I don't remember that. That's cool that they included a Lotus. Lotuses were very popular throughout many series, though, which was a fantastic thing. What should we talk about next? Before we move on, I should probably say why I'm talking about this. One, there is semi-recently there was a new anime short that was released online that we're going to watch at the end of the show, and it was fantastic. It's one of the best ones I've seen so far that actually had the inclusion of a car company in the production. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, we can always do every single week, which is I just talk about the news. I just, repeat everything I can find online that you guys would probably enjoy. Or I can easily put something like this together, which gives you a little more insight into the back history, and maybe even find a series, an anime or a manga that you haven't checked out before. In the process of actually researching for this episode, I found a couple that I'm going to be looking into. So, hey, might as well share the knowledge everywhere. Going back to Lotus, another series that actually, yes, that had a good deal of cars, including a Lotus Europa, a Subaru Impreza WRC, but more importantly, a Caterham Super 7 JPE. Oh, the thing is so nice. I'm talking about EX Driver. And let's just go and play the opening, and you'll see just by the opening how prevalent cars are to this series. This series had so many great cars, and they used them so much. It was fantastic. I mean, yes, there was also a bunch of other storyline that went through, but you know what? For me, it was just the cars. The cars were freaking amazing. Not to mention tons and tons and tons of fodder for wallpapers. I mean, even the fan art or the official art alone is just amazing for wallpapers. If you're a fan of cars and anime, I mean, when you get shots like this, it's just like, not very many anime could actually pull this off and actually look good. The Caterham 7, it's one of those, ever since I watched an episode of Top Gear where they were talking about one of the Caterhams and they took it around the track, I've always wanted to drive one and just get that feel of, driving something like that around the track. Either that or an Ariel Atom. But then again, I probably have a better chance of finding a Caterham than I can an Atom. So, that's just me. Let's talk about another series that, surprisingly, I did not get into until about maybe 2 years ago. I was well behind the curve on this one. And do I have intro for this somewhere? Oh, I'll find it. It's called You're Under Arrest. This is a series that expanded through numerous versions. They had, the TV series, which had a couple seasons. You had, I believe, the movies. There was a manga. I mean, this was all over the place. And, I mean, the whole thing about it doesn't really scream cars when you first hear about the story. I mean, basically, you have two female members of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police and how they're going about on patrols and whatnot and finding what happens. But there are so many great freaking cars that actually are part of the story. It's fantastic. I mean, I'll bring up just a few that I found. A Subaru R2 that, if you read the manga, which I actually read yesterday just to catch up, in the manga, it was modified with actually 2 different engines from motorcycles. I don't think they did that in the anime, though. I don't remember that part. There was also a Lotus Super 7 that was featured in there. Of course, a Honda NSX. What wasn't used in the, back in the 90s. Another thing that was used heavily in the series was actually a bunch of motorcycles. And they ran the gamut from Yamaha to Kawasaki. They even had a Harley Davidson in there. And of course, Ducati. I mean, they had some really, really good ones in there. I keep on wondering that why in the 80s and 90s, all these artists really liked using these, supercars. My thing is because, and I kind of joke about it, is that they couldn't afford it themselves. Therefore, they're just going to draw it and just, have it that way. Which, okay, I mean, that could happen. But you don't get that sense in recent anime. Especially because a lot of times nowadays, if you have a car in an anime, it's just a CG model. There's barely any passion in drawing them because it's all, done by a computer. It's like, oh, it's right to spec. There's something to be said about a CG car and a hand-drawn car. I mean, a CG car will be exact down to the millimeter if you really want it to be. And okay, fine, you have an exact model of your car in virtual reality. Okay, that's cool. When you have someone that actually draws a car by hand, you may not get all the details, but you definitely get like the passion. You get the feel of what you get when you're supposed to be driving that car. And it all goes back down to these animators probably couldn't afford them, but they were huge fans of these cars anyways. So why not? I mean, it could be just me. I prefer the hand-drawn over the CG. It is what it is. Moving on to another series that had a crap ton of cars and some fantastic guns. Yeah, how could I do an episode on cars and anime without talking about Gunsmith Cats? I mean, aside from You're Under Arrest, there was very few series that had, this level of passion for these cars, in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, I'm just going to show the intro because, again, you just see the passion of, these cars in the freaking, the opening itself. Not even trying to get into, like, however many episodes the series had, but enjoy. All I can say is that blue 1967 Shelby Mustang Cobra GT500 is just gorgeous. I mean, I can't think of a better phrase for it. I mean, the damn thing's a work of art. And when you have the great paint scheme with the blue and with the white racing stripes, and here I am blabbing all over it. I'm going to stop for a moment because that's not the only car that's in this series. I mean, we're also talking about a 1970 Boss 302 Mustang. If you like muscle cars, you want to watch Gunsmith Cats. Well, for a number of reasons. If you like fan service, if you like guns, if you like explosions, if you like cars, you need to watch Gunsmith Cats. Surprisingly, when I was, researching and trying to catch up on old series so I can talk about them on this episode, I totally forgot that there actually was a BMW 2002 Turbo in later on in the series. I can't believe I forgot about all of that. One of the big things in the story that I liked was the fact that they actually create a car, a full-fledged car out of, well, mostly actual parts you can buy, to the point where there's actually some fans out there who have done their best to recreate that actual car in reality. I've only found, I think, 1, maybe 2 that have actually succeeded in that as best they can. It still looks incredible. A good friend of mine actually recommended the series to me at the beginning because he was such a big gun nut, and they used a bunch of highly detailed weapons. Well, when I started watching it, I was like, okay, cool, I can see the guns, the fan service is great, I like the characters, and then they had the cars, and I was just like, oh, okay, I need to watch this series. Yeah. I mean, running down some of the guns you can have in this, you've seen in the series, Beretta 840F, a Walther P38, a Colt 25 Pocket, the list goes on and on and on. But for me, it's the cars. It's just some iconic cars you can find in there. I mean, just the whole thing the whole thing about Bean Bandit, one of the main characters. Everything that he can do. I mean, he can achieve like stunt driver level, stunts. It was fantastic stuff. I'm blabbing again. Go see it. Gunsmith Cats. Fantastic cars and fantastic story. I'm going to come across a series now that I actually was not aware of. Surprisingly, I was thinking that, everything about this episode is going to be about Initial D. Well, the only three things I'm going to say about the Initial D are the RX-7, the FC, and the FD, and, of course, the iconic A88. There are so many cars in the Initial D franchise. It would take an entire episode to go through them. I thought it was the someone's already responding to A86. I thought it was the A88. I am horrible right now. My bad. A86. My apologies. Good to know my friend David's actually watching. Thanks, Dave. The new one is the FT86. Okay, gotcha. See, I mean, I've watched Initial D. I enjoyed it. I was never really huge about, all the cars in it. So when doing research for this episode, I'm like, oh, okay. I'll take another episode and talk just about Initial D in the future. But a series that I came across while researching for this is called Wangan Midnight. And I'm surprised I've never heard about this before. The story gets its roots from the street racing that occurs on Tokyo Shuto Expressway on the Bayshore route. So, it's, I guess, a lot of racing people are going to compare it easily to Initial D. But, I'll let you figure that out for yourselves. Here's actually the intro. It looks fun. I mean, it appeals to me the same way that Initial D did, in the sense that it has some great cars, it has some nice animation, albeit most of that's just CG. And in reading the background, the story of each character while researching for this episode, the fact that they find a Nissan Fairlady Z and actually in a junkyard, and they supposed to be scrapped, and they actually build it back up, and stuff like that just impresses me. I actually enjoy stuff like that, where they'll take something old or something that's supposed to be scrapped and then bring it right back up to proper restoration, or even better than that. The fact that it has an L28 engine is, I'll take that. Not too much more information I have for that series other than that. I am going to be checking it out, and probably in a couple weeks I'll give you guys an update whether or not you should as well. Okay, I need to talk about another classic scene featuring, for lack of a better phrase, it's a yellow Ferrari F40. You guys should know what scene and series I'm talking about. I'm just going to play it, and you guys can enjoy. I know those. No. Yes, that is the classic Golden Boy, and that's from episode 1. I want to see a 40 drive that crazy throughout Tokyo, because I don't think that's feasibly possible. And even if it was possible, who in their right mind who owns a Ferrari F40 to do that? But, oh well. I'd rather see just one on the track. Okay, I'm going to get into a few series now that you probably have not heard of, save for maybe one or two of you. These all have something to do or talk about Formula One. Let's talk about this first one called F. Now, the original manga was actually based in 1985 all the way to 1992. It had a very long run. They had actually a series in 1988, had 31 episodes made by Studio Dean. It actually followed a guy named Akaki Gunma, who was a young, rash teenage boy who decides to move from little country area to the big city to fulfill his dream of racing a Formula One car. This series, not surprising, was actually aired on TV in Italy, and it was a massive hit. Not surprising whatsoever. To the point where they actually created a sequel called F Generation Rudy. That was also shown in Italy, and of course that was also a big hit. An anime about Formula One in Italy, popular in Italy. Who'd have thunk? Yeah. It is, back in the day, 1988. So the graphics were, well, let's just say it's 1980s graphics. Let's leave it at that. But still, the story was popular enough to get people excited for it and actually watched it, especially in Italy. Another F1 based anime was actually called Super Grand Prix. This one actually made its way stateside. This was by Toei. Give you an idea of what the animation was like. There. And you're thinking, oh God, there's no way cars were like that. No, if you ever watched F1 back in the 80s and 90s, they were pretty close to that style. I mean, they kind of, expanded a little bit for, purposes of anime. But, there was a manga. This one was back in the 70s. Because when they started the anime, it was 1977. And it went for over a year to 1978 for 44 episodes. I have to say, when I was watching this series, I watched maybe 2 or 3 episodes. And that's all I could take. Because it reminds me so much of Speed Racer, but trying to keep it serious. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work, especially with that animation style. It never really just synced. But there was a Japan Junkie is stating that there was another Formula 1 anime series, but it was more futuristic. There's a couple. I mean, there was like IGPX, but that's not really Formula 1. Let's talk about a series that I came across in prepping for the episode that intrigued me so much, I actually sat down and watched 2 episodes before I started the show. It's called Capeta, C-A-P-E-T-A. This is based on a manga that actually was started semi-recently, only in 2003, and it's still going on today. So you're looking at, better quality, and you have a more modern storyline, something you're going to get really into. There's an anime based on it, which is fantastic. It is from 2005 to 2006, and it has 52 episodes. Back in the glory days of having series that had 52 freaking episodes, where you can actually have time to focus on, the intricacies of not only just driving, but also character development and storyline. It's, okay, I'm ranting. It's fantastic. The interesting about this series is the story. It talks about this little 4th grader boy who has a love for speed and racing. So he starts off in go-karts. He gets really good. He actually beats apparently like one of the local championships. People start talking to him about, hey, you have some better ideas here, but where you want to go. Next thing you know, he's trying to get into Formula 3. And there's a ton of Formula 1 references, and I believe they actually well, I don't think they got the actual voice, the voices, but they got some of the appearances of some of the more recent, I think Schumacher's in it. More of the recent race drivers, I should say, they're actually in this series near the end. But it's him going from go-karts to Formula 3. Like other racing series, the characters are all hand-drawn, but when it comes to the racing, either in go-kart or Formula 3, that's actually CG. It still looks pretty good, though. I actually enjoy watching it. It's 52 episodes long. You can find it online. It was done by Studio Comet. You might not have heard that series at studio before, but go check it out. Just for the sole fact of the great storyline and the fantastic racing. I'm hoping, because the manga is still ongoing, the guy starts making his jump to Formula 1. How cool would that be to have a modern Formula 1 anime made? That would be so cool. Okay, so those are 3 anime that actually are based or reference heavily Formula 1 that you might not have heard of, or may not have heard of. Do I really have to talk about Speed Racer? I mean, everyone knows about Speed Racer, and I'm not talking about the Wachowskis' psychedelic action flick that they made a few years ago. Let's talk about one called Tailenders. What's funny is that this one was labeled as a movie, but it's only 30 minutes long. It Well, and let me just play I'll play a little trailer for it, and we'll talk afterwards. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, they made a series based off of Redline. No, dear God, no. First up, completely different studio. Redline, as awesome as it was, most of it was, hand drawn, and took years for them to put that all together. And that was done by Studio Madhouse, and that came out, I think, 2011, 2010. This one came out 2009, and this is actually by a company called Studio Picograph. If you've never heard of them before, you're not alone, because the only bit of animation that this company actually has to its name that I could find is this movie. The fact that it's only 30 minutes long makes me wonder if this was like a proof of concept in order to try to get funding to make a series or an actual full-length movie. But it looks epic. If they took this and actually made, a 13-episode series, I would totally watch that. Let me talk a little about the plot. It's on this, planet far, far away. They were terraforming this planet, and because that kind of went awry, all the people who now live on this planet live on these giant moving cities that are on 30-story tall wheels. So the cities are driving themselves all around this planet. And there's actually these races that take place on these cities, and of course all on the planet as well. There is the main character who got in an accident, and apparently he got seriously injured, and the only way to fix him was to actually remove his heart and replace it with parts of his engine. So he's become his engine. Okay. Because of this, the company that sponsors all the races basically said, you are no longer a racer. You are now an engine. You are now part of the car. Therefore, you cannot race. Okay. Enter other person who says, you know what? We'll give you a chance, and there's some little shady dealings happening behind it. But because of this shady person, he's now able to continue racing in this massive race. Yeah. I mean, it's very odd, very unique summary for the story, but the animation quality is so good to the point where I'll bite. Sure, I'll give it a shot. It's called Tail Enders. It's a 30-minute movie. You can find it online. I think it's available for purchase. I forget from where. But yeah, maybe if we get enough, push behind it, maybe they'll actually get funding to make a series or a full-length movie. I'm down. I mean, look how popular Redline was. I'm not surprised this didn't follow in their footsteps in getting funding. But oh well. Okay, I'm gonna introduce a manga now. I know we've been talking about nothing but anime. I'm going to introduce a manga. This one has not been picked up to create into an anime, as far as I know, but I'm very interested in actually reading it. I actually read the first 2 chapters. I only have 271 more to go. It is called Kanojo no Carrera. Started in 2004 and just ended this September, so it's still very recent. You can probably, catch up fairly quickly. The summary is a woman named Reina inherits her father's Type 964 Porsche 911 Carrera RS. The only problem is she doesn't know about the car. She doesn't know about the company behind it. She doesn't even know how to drive a stick, and she doesn't really have a passion for cars. Over the course of these 273 chapters, she finally learns how to become a car enthusiast and makes some new friends and learns what it means to actually, own and take care of one of these cars. The nice thing about it, it doesn't solely focus on this Carrera RS. I mean, it's always there, but they always have cameos from other cars like the 964 RS and even the Toyota 2000 GT. I'm really interested in this. And like I said, I found out about it a couple days ago when the announcement came on ANN that it was ending. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll check it out. I read the first 2 chapters and went, oh man, I gotta read this. So I highly recommend it. Kanojo no Carrera. If you're a Porsche fan or even just a car fan, you'll probably will enjoy this. Okay, the last 3 or 4 things we want to talk about deals with car companies actually working with a production house to make an anime either using or is based on one of their car lines. Let's talk about one that was okay. Hokago no Pleiades, After School Pleiades. It's basically the collaboration between Subaru and Gainax. Gainax has some fantastic work under its belt, so I've had high hopes for it. And I was wondering how they're going to incorporate, Subaru, the car, into, the anime. Were they going to have them drive around everywhere? No. Some of the little subtle hints that they placed around is that the key to the clubhouse is actually a car to a Subaru Impreza, I think. The girls that once they turn to what are they called? Like Pleiadians or something like that, and they're flying about on their brooms. The brooms, when they fly around, have the sound of Subaru cars running around. That was kind of a nice touch. The quick summary is there's a little girl named, obviously, Subaru, who discovers that her best friend Aoi is part of a magical group trying to recover an alien engine fragment so that a little being from the Pleiades system can return to his home. Okay. There was 4 episodes online, English subbed right off the bat. They're still up there. You can go check it out. These actually premiered last February. And during the 1-year anniversary, so February 2012, on the official Twitter account, they posted, "It's not over yet." So most likely we're probably going to get more out of this. I don't know who's asking for more, especially because one of the funny articles that happened about a month after the last episode aired was people were wondering, okay, Subaru, you spent all this money to make this anime based on your cars. Has it improved sales? And compared to last year at that time frame, they made not a whole lot of extra money. They sold 1 more car. Now, granted, yes, they probably, it's probably not fair to put it that way, but initial reports was you spent all this money on an anime and you sold 1 more car because of it. Okay. Yay, marketing. Let's talk about Toyota's bit. Or I should say bits, because they actually have 2. One just recently came out. Let's start with the one that happened earlier this year called PES, Peace Echo Smile. This is a total of 7 episodes, plus a music video and a bunch of behind-the-scenes videos. They worked with Studio 4 Degrees Celsius on this one. This barely has anything to do with the car that they use, the Prius. Basically, the series revolves around a character named Peace, a traveler from space, and Natsubi, a mysterious life form who is enamored by the charm of the earth. And they go out and they learn what it means to be kind to people and the value of love. And what does this have to do with the car? I mean, let me play the trailer for you. And, I mean, you only see one scene that actually has a Prius, and it's doing something very un-Prius-like. Going fast. And flying. I don't know. Here you go. Enjoy. Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, so that's Peace Echo Smile. The animation looks nice. It's very colorful. But what in the hell does it have to do with cars? I mean, at least with the Subaru one, they incorporated bits of the cars and the sounds of the cars into the series. Priuses don't fly like that. I don't know. All right. Well, let's talk about Toyo's other thing. This is a collaboration with Madhouse, actually with Mappa, which is actually made of former Madhouse people. This released 10 days ago. This is called HAMO, H-A-M-O, or short for Harmonious Mobility Network. Essentially, this is not based on a car. This is based on a concept. Not even for a car, but for this network that Toyota's trying to work on. Regarding what they think is the future of intelligent transport systems. Yeah. I mean, they did two little videos. One is about 3 childhood friends reuniting to fulfill an old promise. Okay, kind of cute. It's like 6 minutes long. You can find it online. It's just popped on recently. The second video showcases how the use of electric vehicles, public transit, and intelligent route planning actually are very helpful and how it works all together. What's interesting about this is that this is actually already started its test phase. Like, here's a scene of some of these small little electric cars that Toyota's working together with some small areas in Japan to create this transport network that's all interconnected with your iPhone, with your Android, with all the cars, with bikes even. And okay, I give them props for trying to make something eco-friendly and try to improve how transportation works. The anime just doesn't make any sense though. Okay. Didn't understand why, but hey, they have money, they can spend it any way they want. They spend it on anime, I'll give them props for that. Okay. Now to wrap things up is the one thing that prompted me to make this episode. It's about Mercedes-Benz, and it's called the Next A-Class. They decided to jump in this whole, hey, we're going to make an anime, and they shot for the top. They went straight to production IG and said, you guys make awesome shit. Now you guys need to help us make a short anime that uses our new A-Class series of vehicles. And they went, okay. Then, however much money they spent on this is money well spent. How freaking cool is that? That is the Next A-Class. And I gotta say, for a man who doesn't really have money, for a man who is happy with his Toyota Matrix, because I really like hatchbacks, and I know the car cannot do any of that stuff that they showed in the anime, but I want a new A-Class Mercedes-Benz car. How freaking amazing is that? It uses all the high production quality you get from production IG. You get a fun, albeit kind of crazy, well, I guess not that crazy storyline, the race to get some epic food. No, I've driven hours just to go check out a ramen shop, a barbecue joint. Hell, I know people who decided to get up one day and go, you know what? We're going to carpool to Albuquerque to get some barbecue and drive right back. And that's what they did. So, the fact of just everything put together is freaking amazing. And for those of you like Nightstar in the chat who went, I want a sequel to this. Guess what? There's going to be a sequel. In late December, early January, there's going to be another episode of the Next A-Class. And they've already announced that Mercedes-Benz and Production IG are going to continue this on for the foreseeable future. Win, win, friggin' win. So, all right, well, that's everything I had for this episode of AniBreak. I want to thank you guys for sticking around for the whole hour while I ranted and raved about, cars and anime throughout the years. I know I did not touch on all of them. If you guys have a favorite one, or if you guys think I missed on one, or even have an idea for another episode in the future for me to focus on, a topic or anything like that, shoot me an email. You can send me a tweet, actually, or Facebook at OtakuLifeJason, or you can send an email to AniBreak@OtakuLife.net. You know, let me know what you guys think about it. If you guys have ideas for future episodes, if you guys want to say, Jason, I hated it, don't ever do a show again, please go ahead and do that. I get that all the time. But yeah. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode. Stay tuned for a short post show. And yeah, thank you guys very much for AniBreak. I'm Jason, and I'll see you guys next week. All right, take it easy.